I watched my entire life get auctioned off on a Tuesday afternoon. Standing on the sidewalk across from what used to be my house, the Victorian I'd restored board by board, the garden I'd planted with my own hands, the wraparound porch where I'd imagined growing old, I watched strangers walk through my front door like it was already theirs, because legally, it was. The auction sign swayed in the September wind. Foreclosure sale. Estate of Marcus and Elena Pierce. Bidding starts at $850,000. Except it wasn't Marcus and Elena anymore. It was just Marcus, and the woman on his arm, blonde, 26, wearing the Cartier bracelet I'd coveted for years but never bought because we were saving for our future. She was already measuring the windows for new curtains. Her name was Amber. She was his paralegal. Of course she was. Marcus saw me standing there. Our eyes met across the lawn I used to mow, across the driveway where I'd taught our daughter to ride a bike, across the property line of a life that no longer belonged to me. He didn't look away, didn't look guilty. He just smiled, that cold, satisfied smile of a man who'd won, and pulled Amber closer. That's when I knew. He hadn't just taken my house, my money, my daughter, my reputation. He'd taken my belief that justice existed, that good people were rewarded and bad people faced consequences. He'd taken everything except one thing, the one thing he should have feared most, my memory. Because Marcus had no idea that I remembered every single thing he'd ever done, every lie he'd ever told, every document he'd ever forged, every law he'd ever broken. And I was about to make him wish he'd left me with nothing but the clothes on my back. Have you ever lost everything and realized that rock bottom was actually the foundation you needed to build something unbreakable? Let me take you back 12 years to when I still believed in fairy tales. I met Marcus Pierce when I was 28, working as a records clerk at the county courthouse in Portland, Oregon. He was 35, a rising star defense attorney with a corner office downtown and a reputation for never losing a case. I was nobody, daughter of a single mother who'd cleaned houses to put me through community college. I had an associate's degree in paralegal studies, $30,000 in student loans, and dreams of maybe someday going to law school if I could ever save enough money. Marcus noticed me one afternoon when he came to pull case files for a trial. I was reorganizing the archive system, a project no one else wanted to touch because it was tedious and unrewarding, but I loved it. Loved the order, the logic, the satisfaction of making chaos make sense. "You have an incredible memory," he'd said, watching me locate a 20-year-old case file in under 3 minutes without consulting the computer. "I asked for the Morrison case, 1994, and you walked straight to it. How'd you do that?" I'd shrugged, embarrassed. "I just remember where things are, always have. Numbers, dates, places, it all just sticks." He'd looked at me differently then, like I was interesting, like I mattered. "Have dinner with me," he'd said. I should have said no. The courtship was intense. Marcus pursued me like I was the most fascinating woman in the world. He took me to restaurants I couldn't pronounce the names of, bought me dresses that cost more than my monthly rent, introduced me to his colleagues like I was someone important. "This is Elena," he'd say. "She has the most extraordinary mind I've ever encountered. Total recall. She can remember everything she's ever read, seen, or heard. It's remarkable." I'd loved that, being remarkable to someone like him, being seen. We were married within 6 months. I was pregnant within a year. Maya was born on a snowy January morning, and for a while, everything felt perfect. Marcus was making partner at his firm. I'd stopped working to stay home with the baby, his idea, though he'd framed it as my choice. "You're so good with her," he'd said, "and my income is more than enough for both of us. Why stress yourself?" So I became a stay-at-home mother. And I was good at it. I kept an immaculate house, raised a brilliant, sweet daughter, supported Marcus's career by hosting dinner parties for his colleagues and remembering every client's name, every judge's preference, every detail that might help him win. I became his secret weapon without even realizing it. "Elena, what was the name of Judge Hartwell's wife?" he'd ask, before a hearing. "Catherine. They've been married 32 years. She collects antique teapots. Her mother died of breast cancer in 2008. "Elena, refresh me on the Johnson case details." Filed March 15, 2012. Plaintiff claimed $2.3 million in damages. You got it dismissed on a technicality. Statute of limitations expired by 17 days. The judge was annoyed, but had to rule in your favor. I was his walking encyclopedia, his personal hard drive, his unfair advantage, and he never once gave me credit for it. The red flags started small. The way he'd introduce me at events. "This is my wife, Elena. She takes care of our daughter." Never, "She has an incredible mind" anymore. Just, "She takes care of our daughter." The way he'd edit my opinions out of conversations. If I corrected a fact at a dinner party, he'd smile indulgently and say, "Elena's been at home with Maya so long, she's a bit out of touch with how things work in the real world." The way he insisted I didn't need my own bank account. He'd said, "We're married. What's mine is yours. Why complicate things with separate accounts?" Except it wasn't "what's mine is yours." It was "what's mine is mine, and you get an allowance." The way he started working late, later and later, coming home smelling of perfume that wasn't mine, with receipts in his pocket for restaurants we'd never been to together. When I confronted him, gently because I'd learned that direct confrontation made him cold and distant, he made me feel crazy. "You're being paranoid, Elena. I'm building a career. I'm doing this for us, for Maya, so she can have everything we didn't have growing up. And you're accusing me of cheating? That's insulting." So I stopped asking, stopped noticing, stopped trusting my own instincts. That's what gaslighting does. It makes you doubt the evidence of your own senses until you can't tell what's real anymore. But my memory never lied. And somewhere deep in my mind, I was keeping track of every inconsistency, every lie, every piece of evidence that something was very, very wrong. I just didn't know I'd need it yet. The end came on Maya's 10th birthday. I'd spent weeks planning the party. 20 kids, princess theme, homemade cake, party favors I'd assembled by hand. Marcus had promised he'd be there by 2 p.m. to help. He showed up at 5:30. Drunk, with Amber giggling on his arm. "Sorry you were late," he slurred, not sounding sorry at all. "Got caught up at the office." The office that was apparently a bar, in front of our daughter, our neighbors, our friends. He introduced Amber as his colleague and proceeded to ignore Maya while flirting with a woman young enough to be his daughter. I pulled him aside in the kitchen. "What are you doing?" I hissed. "This is Maya's birthday. You promised." "I don't answer to you, Elena," he interrupted, his eyes cold and sober, despite the alcohol on his breath. "I'm here, aren't I? Stop being so controlling." "Controlling? I asked you to be present for your daughter." "My daughter, who you've been turning against me for years with your constant nagging and criticism?" I stared at him. "What are you talking about? I'm done," he said flatly. "I'm done with this marriage. I'm done with your neediness. I'm done pretending to be happy in a life I never wanted." The world tilted. "Marcus!" "I filed for divorce. You'll be served next week. I suggest you get a lawyer." He walked out of our daughter's birthday party, walked out of our marriage, walked out of our life. Amber followed him, wiggling her fingers in a little wave at me as she passed. Maya found me crying in the kitchen 20 minutes later. She was 10 years old, wearing her princess crown, holding a piece of her birthday cake. "Mommy, where did Daddy go?" Have you ever had to explain to a child that their world just ended and you have no idea how to put it back together? The divorce was a massacre. Marcus had been planning it for months. While I'd been planning our daughter's birthday party, he'd been liquidating assets, hiding money, and building a case to paint me as an unfit mother. His evidence? I had no income, no career, no financial independence. I'd been completely dependent on him for over a decade, which raised questions about my ability to provide stability for Maya. My evidence? I'd raised our daughter for 10 years while supporting his career in every way possible. The judge didn't care. Marcus's lawyer, a shark in a designer suit named Patricia Chen, presented a devastating case. I was unemployed. I had no recent work history. I'd been isolated from the workforce for so long that I lacked marketable skills. I'd been living in a bubble of luxury funded entirely by Marcus's income, which meant I was unprepared for the realities of self-sufficiency. She made staying home with my daughter sound like a character flaw, like a failure, like proof I was incompetent. And she had documents, so many documents. Medical records showing I'd been prescribed antidepressants after Maya's birth. Evidence of mental instability. A police report from when I'd called 911 during a particularly bad fight with Marcus, when he'd punched a hole in the wall next to my head. Evidence of a volatile home environment that Miss Pierce contributed to through her provocative behavior. Statements from Marcus's colleagues, people I'd cooked dinner for, people I'd welcomed into my home, saying I'd always seemed unstable, emotional, difficult. It was systematic character assassination, and I had nothing to fight back with. No income, no savings in my name, no evidence of Marcus's infidelity because I'd never actually caught him. I'd just known, and knowing doesn't hold up in court. The settlement was even worse. The house I'd restored with my own hands, the house where I'd raised my daughter, was Marcus's separate property. He'd bought it before we were married, and I'd foolishly never been added to the deed to keep the title clean. The retirement accounts, the investments, the savings, all in his name. I got the legal minimum, a division of marital assets acquired during the marriage, which amounted to almost nothing because Marcus had been very careful about how things were titled. I got $3,000 a month in spousal support for 3 years. After that, nothing. I got every other weekend with Maya, plus alternating holidays. Marcus got primary custody because he had stability, a house, a career, a steady income. I got my car, a 10-year-old Subaru with 140,000 miles on it. I got my clothes. I got 60 days to vacate the house. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of partnership, sacrifice, support, labor. And I walked away with $3,000 a month, a dying car, and custody of my daughter every other weekend. Marcus walked away with everything. I found an apartment in a questionable neighborhood on the east side, studio, $800 a month, with paper-thin walls and a radiator that clinked all night. It smelled like mildew and cigarette smoke from the previous tenant. I hung up Maya's drawings on the walls to make it feel like home. It didn't work. The first night she stayed with me, she cried, "I want to go home, Mommy." "This is home now, sweetheart," I said, holding her while my heart shattered into smaller and smaller pieces. "No, it's not. Home is with Daddy, in my real room." She didn't mean to hurt me. She was 10. She was confused and scared, and her whole world had been turned upside down. But it hurt anyway. I tried to find work, tried to restart the career I'd paused a decade ago, but the legal field had changed. Everything was digital now, computerized, automated. The skills I'd had as a 28-year-old records clerk were obsolete, and my gap in employment, 12 years of homemaker on my resume, made me unhireable. I applied to 50 jobs in 2 months. I got 3 interviews, no offers. "You're overqualified for entry-level positions, but underqualified for anything senior," one hiring manager told me. "And frankly, you've been out of the workforce too long. We need someone who can hit the ground running." I wasn't overqualified. I wasn't underqualified. I was just irrelevant. I took a job as a barista at a Starbucks near the courthouse. Minimum wage plus tips. I worked 40 hours a week and barely made rent. I served coffee to lawyers I used to host at dinner parties. They didn't recognize me, or they pretended not to. Marcus came in once, ordered a latte, didn't tip. "Elena," he'd said, like he was surprised to see me, like he hadn't destroyed my life. "Fine," I said, because what else could I say? "Good, good. Listen, about this weekend, I'm taking Maya to the coast. Amber's family has a beach house, so I'll need to switch weekends with you." It wasn't a request. He knew I couldn't say no. If I pushed back, he'd file a motion saying I was being uncooperative and placing my needs above Maya's well-being. "Sure," I said. "Great. I'll have Amber send you the details." He walked out with his latte, didn't say goodbye. I made it through my shift, drove home, climbed into my creaky twin bed in my mildew-smelling studio, and I broke. I cried until I couldn't breathe, until my chest ached, until my eyes were so swollen I couldn't see. I'd lost everything: my home, my daughter, my identity, my future. I had nothing left. Nothing except one thing Marcus had forgotten about, one thing he'd never valued, never seen as a threat, never bothered to destroy: my memory. When someone takes everything from you, when they think you're beaten, when they stop seeing you as a threat, that's when you become most dangerous. Do you believe that? I found it 3 months after the divorce was finalized. I was going through boxes of papers I'd grabbed from the house during my rush to move out. Old bills, receipts, documents I'd shoved into trash bags without really looking at them. Most of it was junk, but one folder caught my eye. It was labeled Morrison Case, 1994, in my handwriting. The case Marcus had asked me about on the day we met. The one I'd pulled from the archives with my perfect recall. I opened the folder. Inside were copies, photocopies I'd made years ago when Marcus had been working on an appeal. He'd asked me to organize his case files, and I'd done what I always did: made backup copies of everything, filed them meticulously, stored them for just in case. But this wasn't just the Morrison case. This was 12 years of cases, hundreds of documents. Every case Marcus had ever worked on, every motion he'd ever filed, every piece of evidence he'd ever used. I'd been his filing system, his backup drive, his safety net, and I'd kept copies of everything. I started reading, and as I read, pieces started clicking into place. The Johnson case, 2012. Marcus had won by arguing the statute of limitations had expired. But looking at the documents now, with clear eyes and no longer trusting him, the dates were wrong. He'd altered the filing date on the original complaint, making it appear older than it actually was. Document fraud. The Chen case, 2015. Marcus had gotten evidence suppressed by arguing it was obtained through an illegal search. But I remembered the investigator he'd hired, the one who'd come to our house for dinner, the one who'd gotten drunk and told me how he sometimes bent the rules for Marcus's cases. Witness tampering, suppression of evidence through false testimony. The Brennan case, 2018. A DUI defense where Marcus had somehow gotten the breathalyzer results thrown out. I remembered him laughing about it at home. I know a guy at the crime lab. He owed me a favor. Evidence tampering, corruption. Case after case after case. 12 years of unethical conduct, illegal activity, and courtroom fraud. And I had documentation of all of it. Not because I'd been planning anything, not because I'd suspected anything, just because I was thorough, organized, and had a memory that never let anything go. Marcus had built his entire career on cheating, and I had proof. But proof wasn't enough. I knew that now. The legal system hadn't protected me during the divorce. Why would it protect me now? I needed more than evidence. I needed a strategy. I needed leverage. I needed to think like Marcus, 3 steps ahead, cold and calculating, willing to do whatever it took to win. I started building my case the way he would have built one against me, methodically, ruthlessly, with no mercy. I made digital copies of everything, uploaded them to encrypted cloud storage, printed physical copies, and stored them in 3 separate locations. I started researching Oregon state bar rules, legal ethics violations, criminal statutes for evidence tampering, perjury, obstruction of justice. And I started watching Marcus. Not stalking, nothing that would give him ammunition to use against me, just paying attention, observing, remembering. I remembered which clients he was representing, which judges he appeared before, which cases were making the news. I remembered Amber's schedule, when she went to the gym, 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, where she got her nails done, Lux Spa on Thursdays, what coffee shop she frequented, the Stumptown on 3rd Avenue. I remembered Marcus's patterns, his routines, his weaknesses, and I waited. Because revenge isn't a sprint, it's a marathon, and I was prepared to run for as long as it took. I quit Starbucks and got a job at a small legal research firm. It paid $15 an hour, barely more than the coffee shop, but it got me back into the legal world, got me access to databases, court filings, professional networks. The firm was run by a woman named Patricia Morales, no relation to Patricia Chen, thank God. She was in her 60s, semi-retired, running the business more as a passion project than a moneymaker. "Why do you want to work here?" she asked during my interview. "You're clearly overqualified for data entry and case research." I could have lied, should have, probably, but something about Patricia's directness made me tell the truth. "I'm rebuilding my life after a brutal divorce," I said. "I stayed home with my daughter for 10 years while my ex-husband built his career. Then he left me with nothing, took almost everything in the settlement, and got primary custody because I don't have financial stability. I need to get back into the legal field. I need to become financially independent, and I need to remember how to fight." Patricia studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled. "You're hired, but not for data entry. I need a senior researcher, someone with experience, someone who understands how the system works. The pay is $25 an hour, and you'll work directly with me on active cases. Interested?" "Yes," I said, trying not to cry from relief and gratitude. "Yes, absolutely." Good, because I also went through a brutal divorce 30 years ago, and I know what it's like to have to claw your way back. Welcome to Morales Legal Research, Elena. Let's show the world what you're capable of. Working with Patricia changed everything. She taught me how to navigate the modern legal database systems I'd missed while I was home with Maya. She taught me advanced research techniques, how to find needles in haystacks, how to build airtight cases from scattered evidence. But more than that, she taught me how to be ruthless. "You're too nice," she said one day, watching me draft a research memo that was meticulously fair to both sides of an argument. "Stop giving them outs. Stop being balanced. Your job is to win, not to be fair. Fair is what cost you everything in your divorce. Fair is a luxury you can't afford." It was harsh, but it was true. So I stopped being fair, started being strategic, started thinking like Marcus. And I got good at it. Within 6 months, I was Patricia's lead researcher. Within a year, she made me a junior partner with a 20% stake in the firm and a salary of $60,000. It wasn't much compared to what Marcus made, but it was mine, earned through my own work, my own skills, my own determination. I moved out of the mildew studio into a small but clean 2-bedroom apartment. Maya got her own room for our weekends together. I bought her a new bed, painted the walls her favorite color, filled it with her drawings and stuffed animals. "I like this place better than Daddy's house," she said one night, curled up against me on the couch. "Really? Why?" "Because you're here, and you're happy now. You weren't happy before." She was 12, growing up too fast, seeing too much. But she was right. I was happy. For the first time in years, I was building something that was mine. Have you ever discovered that losing everything was actually the permission you needed to become who you were always meant to be? But I wasn't just rebuilding my career. I was building my case against Marcus. Every night after Maya was asleep, I worked, organizing documents, cross-referencing dates, matching case files to bar complaints, criminal statutes, ethical violations. I created a spreadsheet, 47 cases over 12 years where Marcus had engaged in prosecutable misconduct. I identified patterns, judges he'd bribed, witnesses he'd coached, evidence he'd suppressed or altered. I found his co-conspirators, the crime lab tech who'd faked breathalyzer results, the private investigator who'd conducted illegal surveillance, the court clerk who'd altered filing timestamps. And I documented everything. Every name, every date, every dollar amount, every statute he'd violated. I built a case that would bury him. But I didn't file it. Not yet. Because I knew Marcus. He was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. If I came at him directly, he'd lawyer up, hide evidence, destroy documents, intimidate witnesses. I needed him to feel safe, needed him to think I was beaten, irrelevant, no longer a threat. I needed him to get sloppy. So I waited, and I watched. 2 years after the divorce, things started shifting. Patricia decided to fully retire, and she sold me her firm for $1. It's worth about $200,000, she said, but I'm selling it to you for $1 because I want you to have it. Build something great, Alina. And when you're ready to take down whoever you're building that case against, and don't tell me you're not building a case, I've seen you working late. Make it spectacular. So at 42 years old, I became the owner of Morales Legal Research, which I renamed Pierce Legal Research and Consulting. Yes, I kept Marcus's last name, not because I wanted any connection to him, but because it would drive him insane that I was succeeding with his name attached to it. The firm grew. I hired 3 employees, took on bigger clients, started getting referrals from major law firms who needed someone who could find anything, remember everything, connect dots no one else could see. My photographic memory, the thing Marcus had used for his own gain, became my superpower. I could scan a 1,000-page deposition and remember every inconsistency, could review years of financial records and spot fraud instantly, could connect seemingly unrelated cases and find the pattern no one else saw. Lawyers started calling me the archive, like I was a person-shaped database that never forgot anything. My income tripled, then quadrupled. Within 3 years of the divorce, I was making $180,000 a year. I bought a house, not as big as the one I'd lost, but it was mine. My name on the deed, my mortgage, my equity. Maya, now 14, started asking to spend more time with me. Dad's never home, she said, and Amber's, she made a face. She tries too hard, and she talks to me like I'm 5. You can always come here, sweetheart, I told her. This is your home too. She started staying with me more, then most of the time, then almost all the time. Marcus barely noticed. He was too busy with his career, his young girlfriend, his image. And I was too busy becoming everything he'd once told me I'd never be. Successful, independent, powerful. That's when Marcus started paying attention. He saw my firm's name appearing on high-profile cases, saw my income increasing, which meant his child support obligation was about to decrease, saw Maya choosing me over him, and he started to panic. He filed a motion to modify the custody arrangement, claiming that my irregular work hours were detrimental to Maya's stability. I had documentation showing I worked standard business hours and was home every evening by 6 p.m. His motion was denied. He filed a motion to reduce child support, claiming my increased income meant he shouldn't have to pay as much. I counterfiled, showing that his income had also increased substantially. He'd made partner, was pulling in $400,000 a year, and his new Porsche and $2 million house suggested he could afford to support his daughter. the judge actually increased his child support obligation. He filed a motion claiming I was alienating Maya from him. I had text messages from Maya begging to stay with me, explaining that Marcus was never home and that Amber made her uncomfortable. The judge ordered family counseling but didn't change custody. Marcus was losing control, and he didn't know how to handle it. Because for the first time in our entire relationship, I wasn't playing by his rules anymore. Have you ever watched someone who's used to winning start to unravel the moment they realize they might actually lose? Marcus's counterattack came in the form I should have expected. He went after my business. Suddenly, clients started canceling contracts, said they'd heard concerns about my firm's ethical standards, said they'd been advised to find other researchers. I knew it was Marcus, knew he was spreading rumors, calling in favors, poisoning the well, but I couldn't prove it. Then one of my employees quit, said she'd been offered a job at a competitor firm for twice her salary. The other 2 employees got similar offers within the same week. Marcus was systematically trying to destroy my business. But the worst came when Maya called me from school, crying. "Mom, Dad's lawyer called the school. They said they used words like unstable and investigation, and now the counselor wants to talk to me about my home environment." My blood went cold. "What kind of investigation?" "I don't know. Something about you using your business to stalk Dad, that you're obsessed with him, that you've been harassing his clients and trying to destroy his reputation?" Projection. Classic Marcus. Accused me of exactly what he was doing to me. "Maya, listen to me. None of that is true. Your father is trying to manipulate the system again, but I promise you, I will fix this." "I'm scared, Mom." "I know, baby, I know, but you don't need to be. I've got this." I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, not the one who'd represented me in the divorce, but a new one, a fighter I'd found through my research work. "Marcus is filing a custody modification," she told me after checking. "Claims you've been engaging in a campaign of harassment and retaliation against him, that you're using your business as a front for stalking him and his clients, that you're mentally unstable and a danger to Maya." That's insane. I haven't contacted him except for necessary co-parenting communications. I haven't contacted any of his clients. I've been running a legitimate business. I know, and will prove it, but Elena, he has affidavits from his colleagues, from some of his clients, from Amber, all saying you've been making threats, showing up at his office, acting erratically. I haven't been anywhere near his office in 3 years. I believe you, but he's building a narrative, and we need to be prepared for the possibility that a judge might believe him. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. 2 weeks where Maya would stay with Marcus for her safety until the matter was resolved. 2 weeks where I couldn't see my daughter, couldn't hold her, couldn't promise her everything would be okay. Marcus had taken her from me again, and this time he was doing it with lies so elaborate, so systematic, so well documented that they might actually work. I spent those 2 weeks preparing, not for the custody hearing, though I was preparing for that too. I was preparing for war, because Marcus had made a critical mistake. He'd gotten so confident in his ability to destroy me that he'd forgotten the one thing that made me dangerous. I never, ever forgot. And I had 12 years of his crimes documented and ready to deploy. The custody hearing was on a Friday morning. Marcus showed up in his $3,000 suit, Amber beside him in a tasteful dress, his legal team flanking him like an army. I showed up alone, in a simple black blazer I'd bought at Target, carrying a single folder. The judge was Harold Morrison. Yes, the same Morrison from the 1994 case, the one where Marcus had committed his first documented fraud that I knew of. Poetic justice, if you believed in that sort of thing. Marcus's lawyer went first, painted me as obsessed, unstable, vengeful, said I'd been stalking Marcus, harassing his clients, weaponizing my business to destroy him. She presented affidavits, screenshots of threatening emails that I'd never sent, testimony from witnesses who claimed they'd seen me at Marcus's office building when I'd never been there. It was all lies, all fabricated, but it was convincing. Then it was my turn. Your Honor, I said, standing, I'd like to address these allegations directly, but first I need to provide some context. I opened my folder and pulled out the first document. This is the Morrison case file from 1994, the case where Mr. Pierce, then a junior associate, altered the filing date on a complaint to make it appear that the statute of limitations had expired, resulting in a dismissal that should never have been granted. The judge's eyes sharpened. Excuse me? I have the original complaint with the authentic filing stamp, and I have the version that was submitted to the court with the altered date. The alteration was made by Mr. Pierce. I know because I was working as a records clerk at the courthouse at the time, and I witnessed him making the change. Marcus went pale. Your Honor, his lawyer sputtered, this is completely inappropriate. This hearing is about custody, not about... Let her continue, Judge Morrison said quietly. I pulled out the next document. This is the Johnson case from 2012. Mr. Pierce won by suppressing evidence that he claimed was obtained through illegal means. But I have recorded conversations with the private investigator he hired, who admits that Mr. Pierce instructed him to lie about how the evidence was obtained. Another document. This is the Chen case from 2015. Mr. Pierce bribed a court clerk to alter a filing timestamp. I have bank records showing a cash withdrawal from Mr. Pierce's account the day before the alteration, and I have testimony from the clerk admitting what happened. Another. This is the Brennan case from 2018. Mr. Pierce obtained false testimony from a crime lab technician to get breathalyzer results excluded. I have text messages between Mr. Pierce and the technician discussing payments for the false testimony. I kept going, case after case, document after document. 12 years of fraud, corruption, perjury, evidence tampering. The courtroom was silent except for my voice and the rustling of papers. Marcus's face had gone from pale to gray. His lawyer was frantically whispering to him. Amber looked like she was about to be sick. Your Honor, I said finally, I'm not stalking Mr. Pierce. I'm not harassing him. I'm not obsessed with him. But I am documenting his crimes, because for 12 years I was his wife, his research assistant, his filing system, and I remembered everything, every case, every lie, every law he broke. I pulled out one final document. This is a complaint I'm filing with the Oregon State Bar, with copies going to the district attorney's office and the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. It details 47 cases of prosecutable misconduct by Mr. Pierce, with full documentation and witness testimony. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, saw the fear in his eyes. I said quietly, "You took everything from me. My home, my daughter, my security, my identity. You made me feel worthless, powerless, irrelevant. You gaslit me into thinking I was crazy for noticing your lies. You destroyed my reputation to hide your own crimes." I placed the folder on the judge's bench. But you forgot one thing. You forgot that I remember everything. Every detail, every date, every document, every word. You used my memory to build your career, and now I'm using it to destroy you. I turned to the judge. As for the custody issue, Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence that every allegation Mr. Pierce has made against me is fabricated. I have my office security footage showing I've never been to his building. I have metadata on those threatening emails showing they were sent from an IP address registered to Mr. Pierce's office. I have testimony from my actual clients stating I've never behaved inappropriately. I pulled out another folder. I also have evidence that Mr. Pierce has been coaching Maya to lie about me, that he's been using Amber to gather information about my business to sabotage it, and that this entire custody filing is retaliation for my refusal to continue covering up his criminal conduct. Judge Morrison looked at Marcus. "Mr. Pierce, do you have anything to say?" Marcus's lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, we request a continuance to review." "Mr. Pierce," the judge repeated, "I asked if you have anything to say." Marcus stood slowly. His hand was shaking. This is all taken out of context. Elena has a history of mental instability, of seeing conspiracies." "Mr. Pierce," the judge said coldly, "I'm the judge on the case she mentioned from 1994, the Morrison case, and I remember feeling at the time that something about your argument didn't sit right, that the dates seemed off, but I couldn't prove it, so I ruled in your favor." He looked at the documents I'd submitted. "It appears Miss Pierce can prove it now, and if even half of what she's documented here is accurate, you're not just losing custody, you're losing your career, possibly your freedom." He banged his gavel. "Custody remains with Miss Pierce. Mr. Pierce's visitation is reduced to supervised only, pending the outcome of the investigations Miss Pierce has initiated. This hearing is adjourned." Marcus tried to approach me as I left the courtroom. "Elena, wait. We can work this out. We don't have to—" "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare. You had 12 years to work things out. 12 years to treat me like a partner, like an equal, like a human being. Instead, you used me, lied to me, gaslit me, and then destroyed me when I was no longer useful." "I made mistakes, but—" "You didn't make mistakes, Marcus. You committed crimes for 12 years, and you would have kept committing them if I hadn't remembered every single one." "You're going to destroy my entire life over what? Over you destroying mine first? Over you taking my home, my daughter, my security, my identity? Over you turning me into a joke while you paraded your mistress around in jewelry you claimed we couldn't afford?" I stepped closer. "You took everything from me, Marcus. Everything, except the one thing you should have feared, my memory. And now I'm taking everything from you." I walked away. Behind me, I heard him start to cry. I didn't look back. Have you ever gotten revenge so complete, so perfect, so utterly justified that you felt nothing but peace? The Oregon State Bar suspended Marcus's license within a month. The criminal investigation took longer, but eventually charges were filed. Fraud, perjury, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, corruption. He pled guilty to avoid trial, avoided prison by cooperating with investigators and testifying against his co-conspirators, but his career was over, his reputation destroyed, his fancy house foreclosed on when he couldn't make the payments without his law firm income. Amber left him before the plea deal was even finalized. Turns out she wasn't interested in dating a disgraced criminal defense attorney with no money and no prospects. Marcus ended up working as a paralegal at a small firm that specialized in workers' comp cases, making about $40,000 a year, living in a studio apartment not unlike the one I'd lived in after our divorce. I should have felt satisfaction, should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired and free. Maya is 18 now, brilliant, kind, strong. She's heading to college in the fall, full scholarship to Stanford, studying law. "I want to be like you, Mom," she told me when she got the acceptance letter. "I want to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. I want to remember everything and use it to make things right." She visits Marcus sometimes, monthly supervised visits that she doesn't have to do anymore, but chooses to anyway. "He's sad," she told me once, "and old, and I think he's finally understanding what he did, not just to you, but to himself." I don't wish Marcus well. I don't forgive him. I don't forget what he did. But I also don't think about him much anymore, because I've built a life that's so full, so rich, so completely mine that he's become irrelevant to my story. Pierce Legal Research and Consulting is now one of the most respected firms in the Pacific Northwest. I have 12 employees, 7 figures in annual revenue, clients across the country. I bought a house on 2 acres with a garden where I grow vegetables and flowers. I adopted a dog, a rescue mutt named Justice, because I'm predictable like that. I date occasionally, carefully. I've learned to spot the red flags early, to value myself enough to walk away at the first sign of someone trying to diminish me. But mostly, I focus on my work, on building something meaningful, on using my gift, my extraordinary memory, to help people who've been wronged, who need someone who won't forget, who won't give up, who won't let the guilty get away with their crimes. People ask me sometimes if I regret how things went down, if I wish I'd just taken the high road, moved on, let karma handle Marcus. I tell them the truth. I don't believe in karma. I believe in documentation, evidence, and strategic planning. Karma is what happens when someone with perfect recall decides you've taken enough from them. Marcus thought he took everything from me: my home, my money, my daughter, my identity, my future. But he left me with the one thing he should have feared most: my memory. And I used it to take everything from him, not out of hatred, not out of bitterness, not even out of revenge, really. Out of justice. Because sometimes the people who destroy you give you exactly what you need to destroy them back. You just have to be patient enough to wait for the right moment, smart enough to document everything, and brave enough to use it when the time comes. So here's my question for you. When someone destroys your life, when they take everything you have and leave you with nothing but your own strength, do you let them get away with it? Or do you use what they overlooked to make sure they never hurt anyone again? Because I've learned that the most dangerous thing you can do to your enemy isn't to fight them head on. It's to remember everything and wait for them to forget you're still watching. What would you have done?